welcome to the Forward Unto Dawn podcast, the show about the history and universe of the Halo franchise. This is episode 36. I'm David, and I'm joined by co-host Danny.
Hi, Leo.
And we're recording this the evening of the 23rd, which today was Microsoft's Xbox showcase. They had a previous event where there was a lot of third-party stuff. This is mostly Microsoft's first-party studios. So they had
the first-party showcase event.
Yeah, and so I think before we get into the Halo specifically stuff, what were your thoughts about everything overall?
As in like the showcase.
Yeah.
I thought the showcase was really wonderfully diverse in the sort of journey it took in terms of the games it showed, the genres, and I thought it was very, very aimed at the PlayStation demographic. PlayStation historically is all about that widespread approach, whereas Microsoft has usually been more narrowly aimed at the hardcore crowd, with Gears and Forza being particularly niche or adult. So I thought that they were going for the more broad spectrum of this is a family platform now. There's games for all audiences, and I thought that they were very successful in putting forward that case for the platform.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a lot of stuff here, and it definitely hit the gamut. There was like one called the Gunk.
I couldn't stop looking at the character's face. It was just so stupid. That art style didn't sell it to me. I was like, oh.
Ars Technica described it as Splatoon meets No Man's Sky, which I kind of felt was accurate. Then you had like the bigger stuff, like the Warhammer people got tired of having you kill a bunch of rats, so now it's Warhammer 40k, and it looks like you're just, I don't know, killing future zombies. There's Stalker 2.
Yeah, that I do wish I actually liked Warhammer, because if I did, that sounded interesting. People seem to be excited
I really liked. I was one of those people who never actually played Left 4 Dead. So Vermintide was my first experience with that kind of game, and I liked it a lot, except at some point it just became brutal and high difficulties, and I 100%ed that game, and that made sure I would never do it again, because that was a pain in the butt. There was you got Jack Black showed up because he's doing Psychonauts 2 stuff.
I'm not complaining about more Jack Black, to be honest.
Obsidian was interesting because they had a ton of stuff. Actually, they were showing off. They had Avowed, which kind of looked like a Skyrim-esque.
The generic RPG, the game. Yeah, that looked very, very RPG-like. There was definitely RPG elements strongly throughout of that RPG showing.
But they also had I appreciated that they had the major bit of humor in the entire thing, where they poked fun at the fact that the biggest game of this year is, all right, it's Cyberpunk, but we've got this game where you're tiny and running around.
You know, for a Microsoft conference, why didn't they say Halo? Like, why did they not say Halo?
Because they're being realistic. They know it. They know it's Cyberpunk. Everyone knows it's Cyberpunk.
That's the same trailer with Battletoads statue, and no Battletoads.
And then there were minor things like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, unsurprisingly, is getting a Xbox Series X version.
Why is that a thing and not just a title update?
I assume it is just a title update, but they just want to have something that shows off 120 frames per second because they said the console can do it. If you didn't
I'm glad people will enjoy their title update then.
If you didn't like the Goo game, did you like Everwild's art style?
Which one was that?
That's Rare's game, where it's like kind of
cartoony.
Hell no.
That's not Banjo-Kazooie. I don't care. I'm sorry, Rare. If it's Banjo yet? Maybe Perfect Dark. Maybe. Is it that?
There was Forza, obviously, which
you always assume Forza's there.
Mostly, it was interesting because it doesn't sound like it's going to be a launch title. It didn't seem like it was that far along.
There's always going to be cars. Always going to be cars. Give me more Halo cars. Give me more of that.
There's State of Decay 3, which I haven't played either of them, so that was lost
Don't
on me. Besides
care.
Zombie
3
Deer,
or 4. Yeah.
there was a briefest touch of a Fable tease, which basically is just confirming what we already knew. It's in development.
People are making Fable news that shocked nobody.
But I think for like the briefest of brief teases, it actually did what it needed to do. Was show like, hey, there's this fantastical world and it's cheeky British humor. Like that's what you're there
You
for.
know the key message I got from that whole presentation? Look at all these great Xbox games, and guess what? You don't need an Xbox.
I mean, that's definitely part
and,
of the
and,
thing.
and you want to take it one step further? You don't even need to pay for them.
Well, I've got because of the deal, I've got Game Pass up through sometime in 2021.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I only have it until the end of this year, so I'm hoping for a strong launch. I really hope, by the way, Fable keeps British humor because that was the only reason why I gave a shit about it.
Yeah, I mean, Fable to me, what distinguishes it is that it was always an RPG light. Like it never, and I really hope they
It didn't
they
take
don't.
itself too seriously.
Yeah, it was cheeky British humor. It was the whole thing about you changing the stuff with the morality system. And then one thing I really appreciated, which I really hope the next one doesn't follow the open world trend, is that it never overstayed its welcome. Like you could put like 40 hours into it and you got a good game out of it. It wasn't something where they had like 20 hours of bloat thrown into it.
Can I say one wee thing? It might be controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I consider the Overlord game to be the spiritual sequel to Fable.
Well, I was actually one of those, like, probably all of like the 5 people in the world who was bummed that they canceled Fable Legends, even though it wasn't a proper Fable game. It was a fun game. And I was sad that it seemed like it was mostly done.
I wouldn't know.
I was playing the beta and then they just cut it and then they
Oh,
killed
you actually
Lionhead.
played it. Oh, that's even worse. Yeah.
So that was a shame. I guess it died on that same asymmetrical gameplay hill as whatever that giant monster thing that was coming out in 2015. Evolve, that's it. Yeah. So it kind of died along with Evolve. And then the only other game I think was shown off or was notable is Don't Nod. The Life is Strange people have a new game, which
don't care.
So overall, I think, like you said, it was definitely a big smattering of games. I think there's something in there that most people would enjoy.
Yeah, honestly, it did feel like they were shooting very wide, and I think they hit everything they were aiming for, at least.
Yeah. And the thing they started right out the bat pretty much with was Halo. Yeah, we got plenty of that. So we'll go through this. There was a bunch of stuff. The first thing, but was sort of like this. I don't even know what I wouldn't call it a story trailer. It's the Step Inside trailer according to YouTube, but I feel like you could say something that 343 has done with their intros and past games has been like kind of have these mood setter tone poem kind of things. Like Halsey's interrogation doesn't directly impact the plot of Halo 4, and neither does her little flashback in Halo 5. And I don't know if this is like,
but it sets the tone.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is gonna come in the beginning of Infinite or this is like, I don't know, something else. But
Blu-ray extra.
Yeah, it feels very much like that with the creation of Chief's new Mjolnir variant.
Hey, well, at least last time we didn't waste Luke Cage's time.
Of his creation of his bespoke Mjolnir variant in like what I can only describe as like the car commercial of wartime fabrication.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it was just missing the like whatever you call that running light pass over the car body where they just turn on all these strobes and stuff so you can see all the details.
I was really expecting at the very end of it to flash up on the screen, enlist now.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think this seems entirely unreasonable from an actual fabrication standpoint, but maybe this is like the UNSC's sexy commercial version.
Yeah, if they can pump them out like that, why not everyone be affected, Master Chief? Come on.
But it was interesting. It actually mostly I really liked the opening has everything being built on this little tethered space station over this really cool planet that
The CGI on those shots, like, oh my god, they were
yeah,
amazing.
it's beautiful and it really reminds me of it actually feels a lot like kind of a Ralph McQuarrie 1970s sci-fi concept art. It's
Yeah,
really
they had
cool.
that sort of hyper detailed painted kind of feel to them.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Yeah, and it's mostly just shots of people looking at you building gauntlets and stuff.
But
With
I'll take all the external shots I can get in that
yeah.
damn trailer.
And so my assumption, of course, you cannot make that because armor representation under 343 has been bizarre, but I am assuming this is Master Chief's infinite armor and it's just being paired with a sometime in the past Cortana monologue about filling the suit. It could be Halsey, but usually Jen Taylor plays Halsey up older, so I assume it's supposed to be Cortana.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like that's definitely a distinction that she's made.
And I think mostly the thing you can take away from this is the part of the doubling down on Chief that they talked about in response to Halo 5, that they're pushing, hey, you're the Chief, become a hero kind of stuff.
But Halo 5 Chief was so sad. He looked so lonely, even surrounded by people. He was so sad.
It's tough being Chief.
He was trying to hunt his own truth.
So there's not too much. Like I said, I think it's kind of treated as a tone poem. Maybe it will have stuff that connects later.
Oh yeah, yeah. If that is what it is, I think it works. It works for me anyway.
Yeah. It's a nice cinematic. It sets things up. It feels like it's really about telling people, yeah, you're Chief this time for the entire game.
Oh, where is Locke? Come on, where's Arby at least?
They're halfway through, Chief dies, and you become the pilot. That would be the twist. No one would see coming.
Except, of course, he's naked and has to escape from some prison for some reason.
You just wake up and it's Skyrim. So that was the little teaser, and then the bulk of what they showed was a roughly 8-minute gameplay demo. And so this takes place roughly, they said, 4 hours into the campaign. But they've also talked about how the campaign's like twice the length of Halo 4s and Halo 5s put together. But when this is an open world, that's not that surprising. So I assume it's kind of like story-wise the end of the first or second mission. And so we get more time with the pilot and Master Chief.
Yeah, don't forget as well, with Halo games, you always have that traditional close to open transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to hit that beat really fucking hard.
Yeah, I feel like this is like the second mission to be your Halo inspiration, and then after this, you shoot down the AA guns, like the world will open up, etc. This is how they start you off in a limited open world way. You get some character moments with the pilot in chief. They talked about in the pressers about focusing on this character who we will find out apparently has a name. It's not just going to be Brohammer. That he's sort of supposed to be like the everyman along for the ride as Master Chief does his thing. He's definitely got that. I'm tired of this. I just want to go home. And Chief gives him the...
But I just happened to wake the super soldier. He's going to save the day, and I just happened to be on this big epic mission. Really?
That seems like his whole, like, oh, I found the Master Chief and was able to power up our ship, and that means we're going to go home, is a total misreading of the Master Chief, and he kind of... that's on him. He made a tactical error there, that this was not going to go the way he wanted.
He's not going to sit out and go, yeah, sure, let's just put him out of here. You know, I mean, yeah, come on, it's the Chief. It's like he's back into action as soon as he's breathing.
Yeah. So they I don't know if they totally get shot down. They mentioned that they're gonna try and find a Condor after this, but they have to. Master Chief has to take out some AA guns, doing what he does. And there's three of them. The rule of threes, like any good video game. And so he pops out. We get a little bit of him driving around in the Warthog, and then he attacks a banished encampment. I think this is obviously the first proper intro to what the game looks like, and I think it's fair to say the overall impression, would you say, Danny, is that people were upset about this?
Well, it's hard to characterize upset. It it didn't meet their expectations visually.
Yeah, I think that people have, because there's been so little about this game shown and we're so close to release, there was a ton of hype, and certainly for some people, it did not meet that at all.
Yeah, like, to be fair, it's next gen platform. Is their next gen entry in their premier franchise? People
Yeah,
do have wildly differing expectations for what that means and what that should look like.
yeah, and I think there's definitely some disappointments because I assume like they're not going to show this on the worst on the Xbox One or whatever it's going to play on, but it's a cross-gen game, and even if this is playing on a Series X, it does have like texture pop in and stuff like that, and definitely sometimes it feels like they just turned off like ambient occlusion and stuff, and there aren't proper shadows with things. It does feel a little rough. Performance wise, like it seems smooth, and I'm sure like
According to one of the devs on Twitter, it's a build from January.
I mean, I can believe that. But it's one of those things where who knows, we'll talk about that later, but who knows how much COVID has screwed with stuff. I'm going to assume, based on some of the stuff we'll talk about after, that it has had a huge impact. Because there's only so much you can do working from home. But I think it's mostly interesting that it very much is a blend of. I think when we saw the previous trailers, I was kind of afraid that they were gonna go, oh well, this is the classic art style. Like let's do that for everything and just toss everything, and they definitely haven't. Um, for good and for ill, it feels very much like a fusion of 343's Halo and Bungie's. Like they've got like what look like the more avian jackals are back. We've got grunts that look very much like the Halo 5, Halo 4 ones, except they've got proper rebreathers. We've got the kind of Halo 2-esque elites. We've got the brutes who are doing their banished thing from Halo Wars. The foreigner stuff looks foreignery, but it still has the kind of simplified look that 343 put in. So yeah, I think it does feel like a fusion. If there's a place that I'm disappointed visually, it's with the new human weapons, which feel like people were describing it as like generic COD or Doom weapons, and they do have that like this is vaguely in the future weaponry, but it's still pretty standard. Like they've got a pretty Glock looking regular pistol instead of
It
the
feels like they intentionally. It is definitely an intentional thing, though. It definitely like it is that generified kind of style that they're aiming for. It
yeah,
seems
and I
like
think
very
that's just a
deliberately.
weird thing to aim for. I know part of the thing that they've talked about in previous games, and is one of the things where you can make weird ass looking weapons, but people generally don't use them. Like you spend all this time making cool alien weapons, and people just want to use the human ones. There's some little details like when you're about to pick up a weapon, it has a slight short description label telling you what it is, which I think is helpful. Maybe to try and get people into it. I do think the pistol looks terrible. It's the what is it? It's the Sidekick, the MK. So it's not a classic Halo pistol we're used to. So that's fine. But on the other hand, the classic Halo pistols look a lot more distinctive. So why not give us one of those?
Oh, I'm sure we'll see it as DLC or in Forge or
Yeah,
it's
we'll
in there
see.
somewhere.
Then there's the Bulldog, which is a new like 12 gauge rapid fire shotgun, um, which again feels like a modern weapon, but at least it does something a little different. And then there's the Commando, which is guess like it's a medium range weapon, scoped weapon. Um, looks like classic scoping in has come back.
Yeah, definitely. No more smart scope.
There's the in not shown in the gameplay demo, but there was also a 1 minute trailer that showed some stuff that was slightly different. The Halo 2 style BR is back. Um, the pretty much basic looking plasma sword, like always, and then a bunch of brute weapons. Feel like this is, if you've seen the toy leaks that came out, like they kind of already showed some of the stuff off. There's the Brute Ravager, a Pulse Carbine, like basically like the usual stuff, the analogs to the classic weapons we've had before.
So balanced analogs. Yeah, that's exactly what people were hoping for, I think.
Yeah. And then the major two things that we know, besides stuff like clamber and sprint still being in the game, and it looks like it plays a lot like Halo 5, which I know some classic people will be upset about, but I think Halo 5.
Halo 5 and Destiny made me accept. Like, that's just how games should play these days.
I like sprint in terms of actually getting around faster. Like, I appreciate the people who don't like it for what it does with multiplayer, yada yada yada.
Hey, I've been playing Halo 3 on PC recently, enjoying the freedom of the expanded field of view, making like sprint not really feel like it's needed, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's one of those things where like even if you make people move like fast, like you're skating around like in Quake, you're always gonna like want to go faster. It's one of those things where in every game they've always cranked the speed for competitive up like to 110% or something. I'm totally, I don't really have an opinion on the question of like whether a game needs sprint or whatever. Clearly, they think it does, and that's what we're here. Who knows what it will be like in multiplayer? That's fine. But besides all that stuff, so like I said, Space Engine or no, it seems like it plays very much like Halo 5, which I think is a good thing in terms of like the moment to moment controls and whatever.
That's one thing I felt Halo 5 really nailed was the responsiveness of the gameplay and the controls in multiplayer in particular. It was really, really solid.
Yeah, it's fun to go back to all the games. Like I think Halo 4 in some ways feels better in terms of weighty, but I also feel like I'm just I am controlling a tank and it's not as fun. Whereas the like Halo 1 through 3, you feel like a lot more weightless. So I think it's all personal opinion, but I think that looks fine. Um, the other two big things are equipment is basically coming back, so Halo 3 style.
I'm so glad how they implemented these things. I'm really happy with what they showed actually, because they were also talking about the inspiration behind it in an interview on one of the websites, and drawing from Halo 3's equipment and learning the right lessons. I think is going to be really awesome.
Yeah, and the other big thing, the other big change is now you get a grappling hook.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, so you get to we see it used to grab like a fusion coil to yourself, and then you can chuck it like a football at people. You can grab enemies.
That felt so natural, by the way. I thought that sort of just blended in. So yeah, that makes sense. That's fun.
Yeah,
It looks fun.
I will have to see. I mean, it all depends on how it controls and stuff, but I'm not opposed to it. They've said this stuff's gonna be in multiplayer, just a lot different.
Can you not already see in your head a no gun run on through the entire campaign? That sounds like a joyous time.
I mean that sounds fun, yeah. Because I mean, one thing I love doing whenever I play Bioshock is you just run around with a wrench only and beat the living crap out of everyone. That's so much fun, more fun than the guns in that game. So
yeah,
any sort of novel, weird speed runs are fun. And we also get to see there's sort of like a visor mode come back, a very ODST style map that shows the terrain around. Who knows how much of that stuff you'll see because actually terrain you can play on.
I got mad at like Skyrim, Assassin's Creed kind of mappy feels from that.
Yeah, my hope with open world stuff is that it avoids the plague I always find with those games, like The Witcher, especially Assassin's Creed, where it's just too many damn icons on the map. Like, hey, you can collect this. Oh, you can do that. You can, like, there's collectibles and everything littering the place, and it's just, as someone who gets bothered by stuff, and especially as a completionist streak, it just drives me nuts. Um, like, I don't think you need to put a bunch of random icons on a map to make open worlds interesting.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't do that. But we do also see that the equipment gets upgrades, so it's not like real RPG style, but there's some stuff that you can do and build
Yeah.
in. We don't really know the full details of that yet, but I'm totally fine with that. So overall, I think from the graphics, definitely could use a lot of polish. The gameplay looks interesting. I'm excited. And then there's the story. So we found out through a teaser that the big bad was going to be the Banished. Um, and it's up in the air, really. I mean, takes place years after Halo Wars 2. It's up in the air what the situation on the Ark still is. I imagine they're not going to go into much detail because Halo Wars 3 or whatever. And the whole point of this being a spiritual reboot, you don't need to know that. They reference Atriox, but it sounds like he's dead or otherwise incommunicado, so they're kind of going on in their stead.
They're doing it for Atriox.
Yeah, for Atriox. And I like the thrust of the character stuff we see in this. I don't know if it feels a little rough to me with the stuff with the pilot and whatever. But I do think the choice to introduce this new big bad for the Banished is really interesting. At the end of this gameplay demo, you go up to disable one of these AA turrets, and instead you get your bad guy talks to you sequence, and so the Banished leader is Esharum. It's one of those things where, like, I only read interviews talking about it, not actually heard anyone say it, so it could be terribly different. I don't know.
Yeah, just Esharum?
Esharum is probably
Esharum?
what it is. So he's pretty toothy, super toothy. But I do think that they managed to set him up as being a bit different than a lot of, like, because usually, like, this is the bad guy comes and taunts you and says, wow, you're just nothing.
You have to admit, these anti-piracy messages are getting really lame in the Halo universe. He actually says to this message before he deactivates the gun or what?
Yeah, that's the crack exploit. But that he says basically, we stomped your buddies, but I'm so happy you're here because you're going to be a real test. And he's like, I'm going to enjoy this.
Is that real-time communication? Because it kind of like flies through the hologram to him actually saying it. Is that like real-time?
It is curious. The entire ending, it cuts in footage, some of which is clearly from the Deliver Hope, the E3 2019 stuff.
Yeah.
So I have to assume that that's not going to be how it plays out in the game. So it's hard to say because, yeah, as you say, he starts out as a hologram and then he sort of fades into the real thing. So I'm not sure if that's just going to be a little.
And can I say just on the appearance of the villain, I think he has a cool design, but coming off Halo Wars 2 quality cutscenes and having a face full of this pretty not particularly visually impressive guy was a bit much. I was like,
yeah, he's not beautiful.
Why is he still on the screen? He's still talking. Like, lore-wise, this is fantastic. But my God, get him off the screen.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, I was looking at just how he was textured, like around his eyes. It was like, all right, that's an next gen thing, but then, like, the rest of him seemed really low res. It did not. The animation is nice, but it did not.
I thought
not look great. Yeah. He's got, because he's a bad guy. He's got like the missing or damaged eye with the scar. So that's how you know, in case you were unclear, that he's bad.
It did feel it just felt really awkward having him extended be on the screen and not be like a visual wow thing to end on. You know what I mean? It was like,
yeah,
really? That's what we're ending on? Oh.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's really going to be in the game. Like I get the feeling that they would not, if it weren't for the end of like kind of a trailer thing, you wouldn't necessarily shoot it like that. So it'll be curious to see what it ends up looking like. So yeah, I don't know, since it's a trailer ish end, and they're reusing footage and stuff. I don't know whether that's how we're going to get that speech in the game or not. But in the B-roll, we also do get, so some of it's from Deliver Hope, but we do get some new footage. There's one of the pilot kind of like kneeling down, I guess, in the wreckage of some ship, and being all sadsies. And probably more interestingly, there's a shot of Chief in the back of a Pelican, and there's a bunch of, like, I guess, friend or foe tags running around, all marked infinity, and then they all blink out to deceased.
Yeah, you see the Oni symbol in one of them?
Yeah, so that's yeah, there's Oni, and then there's the regular UNSC logos. So maybe the Infinity gets blown up, maybe it's out of commission, maybe it leaves. Since so many of them say Infinity, I don't think you can really take it.
Is it just me, or is it clear that the implication here is there was a big ass battle or something, a big giant event where the Banished somehow won, even though we didn't know there was a thing to win because we thought Cortana was in control, but somehow the Banished won something and control a ring, and all the damage and stuff is sort of left over from that?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, if they have something powerful enough to blow up a Halo, then it's not surprising they could do some damage.
Something that took the Chief out of action? Like something that scale where the Chief lost?
Well, we weren't controlling the Chief, so it's fine. You get beat up until the player takes over, and then the power fantasy begins.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's this definitely raises questions so much as it doesn't give us a lot to go on that we didn't already know.
But is that not the typical way like Halo is revealed? It's always more questions than it's answers. That's always the thing they try and do.
Yes and no. I think we definitely, by this point, we would definitely know more than we normally do. Or we would definitely know more if this were a normal launch, which is definitely not. Like, because E3 2007 was when we got the Halo 3 story trailer, which, like, gave you all the cutscenes and stuff and provided a lot more overall. There's so the interesting thing in terms of story is that we've got the Banished. We don't hear a peep about the Created. We do have Isharam name drops two things: the Harbinger, and then the Auditorium. Based on the phrasing, the fact that he talks about we have the ring and soon we'll have the Auditorium, I can assume that the latter is not on the ring. So it's some other Forerunner MacGuffin or something. Whether the Harbinger is just a fancy name for the Created, we don't know.
Yeah, no mention of Guardians either, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it's one of those things where everyone complains about the not liking the Prometheans, but just fighting basically a reskinned version of the Covenant only sounds like a very boring game.
Yeah, but I want to know where the fucking Guardians. We just played Halo 5 Guardians, where these things could control a fucking system single-handedly, the most awesome power outside of a Halo ring we've ever seen, and it was enough for the Chief and a bunch of fucking Spartans to get their asses handed to them, and we were in a losing position, and then suddenly, where the fucking hell are they? You know what I mean? It's not. It's the elephant in the room. I feel. You know what I mean? The obvious elephant in the room, the Forerunner saga elephant in the room.
They definitely do not. This is setting up a conflict that does not tie in directly to Halo 5 at all. And obviously it's going to, because we've got Cortana voiceovers everywhere. And so I hope that we get the Prometheans in, just because multi-faction fights in Halo are great. But who knows how that stuff's going to play out. I mean, if it's a giant campaign like they say.
So is it the Banished versus the Covenant versus the created versus the flood versus humans. Yeah,
I
see.
think I was talking with our old friend Isaac was sad because he didn't think that the flood were coming in this, and I don't think the flood are going to be in this. All that talk about like, oh, it's a flood tentacle in the corner of that teaser video. No, I don't think the flood are going to be in this. Uh, the created in some form are going to be in this. The banished are going to be in this. I think the covenant are going to be dead, mostly because the covenant are basically the banished with a different paint job at this point. I don't know. Maybe we would see like some sorts of St. Helios or something, just because they did build those models for the last game, and they'd be ashamed to toss them all out. Who knows? Um, but it's definitely
I want my profits back. I want my Hergox, man. I want my other guys. They're just missing.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely
Where's my hunters
there's
even?
really there's really nothing here to go on. We know the banished have hunters though from Halo Wars. Uh, there's not much to go on here, but I think that's just less indicative of the campaign, which again they said is huge. Um, and obviously, even if most of that's open world padding, they got a lot of narrative ground to cover.
You know, the one thing I'm really surprised they didn't do in the campaign, they didn't give us the teaser for the rest of it. You know, the holy, this will blow your mind of what's to come, or here is the scale, or here's a glimpse at the rest. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
just got a
It was
really
basically just
concrete look
the vertical
at a little
slice.
small teaspoon of the game, apparently. And it's like, well, don't tell us the rest of the game's bigger without showing us or cluing us in.
Yeah. But I think it's definitely how they're being so coy, and partly because they've talked about how this is a spiritual reboot, and like everything from the hey, this is going to be our get out of the dropship, open up onto the wide world of Halo moment, etc.
But the
They're
problem is, it feels almost like they've went almost too hard in that direction, because anyone that's been paying attention to the Halo story, anyone that's been paying attention to Halo for the past 2 or 3 games, are left completely in the dark for a resolution for all that investment of time. Like, there's no continuance at all. They're literally time jump, deal with it later. Just don't even talk about it. Elephant in the room. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels like they've done that so deliberately. It's like, why not even just give us a nod somewhere?
I think it's going to be there, but I think you're right. The time jump is there because that way random people who haven't been paying attention and fans who have been invested in Halo 4 and Halo 5 are going to be
Or on the
equally,
same footing.
on the same
Yeah.
footing of like trying to figure out what the hell's happening. Um, yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get, like you said, more teaser of the rest of the game.
Yeah, that's why I find really strange. Like, why not? Why not give us maybe a Cortana flash, or some other familiar character in a perilous situation, or just any little fucking cryptic anything to go on? It's like, okay, fair enough. Like, you don't want us to care about that then? You don't want us to have those expectations and to hype us up and get excited for that right now when you're selling us the console? Fair enough. That's your statement.
Yeah, and so that I guess brings us to where it goes from here. Waypoint posted an article. And there's some other stuff. We'll put all the stuff in the show notes. Interviews with IGN, etc. Um, and so they mentioned that, like, all right, here's the stuff. Here's our sandbox. We're going to talk about multiplayer later. Uh, um, and we get some details on the production side of things. This was an interesting thing. We heard that there was a new composer, Curtis Schweitzer, and now we know that he's getting a second composer to help him. And I personally did not know anything about Curtis Schweitzer. However, I do know Gareth Coker because he's the guy who did Ori and the Blind Forest, which is not what I immediately think of as a Halo score or whatever, but it's a very good one. And I think from the music we get in the teasers and stuff, it sounds Halo-y. Like that mission has been accomplished, and not something I'd be worried about.
It definitely feels like generic Halo music. It's like, oh, not kind of like that, but okay, yeah. It's like
And you got your choral
Halo-ish,
music,
yeah.
like you got what you expect. then so we were talking briefly about like, yeah, so supposedly this is from January. Why is it such an old build? Well, because COVID. And there's a lot of stuff about how we're packing in 10 times the processing per pixel, whatever the hell that means. They're just so dense.
Whatever the hell that means.
Each
Holy,
pixel.
why is that even relevant? A fucking pixel, 10 times. Really? So what? So what? You know? So what?
Yeah, I mean, the more interesting is that we're getting 4K 60, up to 4K 60. So I'm
Yeah,
sure it's
damn
going to be
right. That
like,
is awesome, by the
it's
way.
going to be like 640p 60 on my old sad Xbox One from launch. But smart delivery means that it'll scale up. We're PCs now. That's fine. I mean, of all the things to complain about 343 about, like performance is definitely not one of them. Like they made
No.
rock solid 60 at Halo 5, despite the sacrifices. So
The fact is, that they confirmed today, whenever that went out, that on Steam right now you can add Halo Infinite to your wish list. I can't wait. Like, that is awesome. Day one release.
yeah, so it's going to be. And one thing they said about the entire program, not just Halo, but they're bringing everything to Game Pass. So you can be on Xbox One, you can be on the Series X. Wait, Series X? Oh, God, see, that's still throwing me. I'm trying to say Series 10 because I've got so many years as a Mac user. But Windows 10, so Game Pass on PC or Xbox. One thing that we didn't get, which I feel like is definitely a COVID thing, is that they mentioned, hey, we've had private flights, and there's going to be more open flights with the Insider program. There's not going to be like public flights, so there's not going to be any like multiplayer beta kind of thing.
It looks like our private flight invitations were lost in the
Yeah,
lost in the
it's
post, unfortunately.
curious. You should check in on that 343 people, and that ties into there's a bit of a line in the Waypoint article that the team is still working and assessing options for broader hands-on opportunities before launch, and we'll share an update when we can. But this process doesn't stop with launch. In fact, in many ways, feedback and community flighting will be even more important after launch as we partner together to continually evolve and update the game into the future. That concerns me because that sounds like we're going to get like an early access thing in all but name.
To be honest, as someone who has background in that, I actually find that quite fun and interesting and quite exciting. But that's just
I mean,
maybe that's just me.
The issue for me is less, I'm not concerned about it being terribly bug ridden, etc. Things like apparently ray tracing support isn't going to come at launch. Like, all right, that's fine. It's going to make the game look so much better, but I can appreciate that you can't get everything to launch, especially when this is a cross-gen game. More, it concerns me with the fact that the issue, a huge issue, not the only issue, but a huge issue Halo 4 and Halo 5 both had was that they didn't have Forge in a full way. They were not feature complete at launch, and like a year in, yeah, that stuff was all fixed. And I know that's the way games are going now, but a year in, half the player base will have moved on to something else because it wasn't there. And that's where it concerns me, just that if you don't have a strong enough showing out the gate, like you can fix stuff up later, like Sea of Thieves, Master Chief Collection are all examples. And it's definitely more and more common now, but if you don't have something compelling at the beginning.
Hey, look at Bungie with Destiny. Like there's a not the best game in the world at launch, and they just work on it. So
yeah, and I mean, I appreciate that that's the way of the world. They had an IGN article specifically about Halo Infinite 2 won't be happening because they have a line, Halo Infinite is the start of our platform for the future. You want Infinite to grow over time versus going to those number titles and having all the segmentation. That's like, okay, games as a service stuff, blah, blah, blah.
I think they really took that Destiny stream very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it concerns me. It's not, who knows, ultimately. I just want a decent game when we start up. Like, God help us if like the campaign isn't fully done or something. I don't know.
Oh God, not another cliffhanger. It's
Story
now time
DLC,
to go back to the chief.
give you the other
Back
half
to
of
the chief.
give you the other half of the game in 6 months. I don't know.
To be fair, if the worst case scenario is another Halo 2, would that really be bad considering how high quality that rushed game turned out?
I mean, Halo 2 was never the cliffhanger, and that never bothered me.
Oh, it bothered the shit out of me.
Yeah, like that was fine. I felt like we got enough there that that the fight was not finished was not bothering me.
I was playing on couch co-op with a friend, and I was loving the shit out of the game, and I was really looking forward to that final level with the Chiefs.
And then we got the final like fourth of the game turned into an entire campaign with Halo 3. Uh,
You know what? I wasn't complaining.
yeah, I mean, like that. Despite the fact that Halo 3 doesn't have a narrative that evolves for the first third of the game, like the campaign, if it's a fun campaign, that takes a lot of sins off.
It's a tour de force of set pieces, and I can appreciate that for what it is in a video game. That's the most important thing I feel.
It's really, I mean, I think I understand why people were let down. I'm still hopeful. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just one of those things. People are going to be let down about everything. Hype is through the roof now. I don't know. I felt whelmed. I
Yeah,
was
very
neither
well.
under
Yeah.
nor overwhelmed. I felt like we got something, and I hope that the this opens the floodgates for more stuff. Because yeah, we've got like, I mean, I don't see that any way this ships later than November. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, like basically 4 months to go.
The one thing I really appreciated, I don't think we mentioned it, was the sounds of the trailer of the demo. I noticed like even like the jackals are now speaking in recognizable English by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think like we were talking about the visual stuff, but yeah, we didn't talk about the sounds. It definitely does feel like very much similarly like a blend of 343. They brought back like stuff like classic Halo Shield sounds or whatever, but there's also
I was so happy to hear that and very disappointed to see it. My
actually,
God, was that intrusively ugly? What the?
yeah, that's one thing I was saying on Resetera is that one of the issues I've had with 343's games is that they've pushed the hey, you're inside the Chief's helmet thing a little too far, and it's been obtrusive. And the HUD seems a lot cleaner and much more like Halo 3, where they just had like the slight hint of like the curvature and stuff, which I like. The downside is when your shields go back up, there's like this big hexagonal pop, and I'm sure like you'll get used to it, but it reminds me so much of the Bioshock Infinite shield breaking effect that never stopped being annoying as hell. And I really hope that, like, if there's flighting in something, people say, "Hey, can you get rid of this terrible shield recharge visual effect?" Because that's my only complaint with that.
To be honest, whenever I see it on screen, I genuinely thought, did someone forget to turn off debug mode on it? I hate
Yeah,
to say it, but
it
it
was
was
annoying.
like, oh no, oh God, no, someone forgot. You know, it was like, oh.
Yeah, it was an annoying blemish that I hope gets addressed. Because otherwise, I can appreciate people who don't think it looks next gen enough, but I think I definitely feel like in some ways it's a throwback. The overall style is a throwback to Halo 3 because, for better or worse, like Halo 3,
Oh, I am loving the homage and visual throwbacks, the audio throwbacks to Halo. It does feel like the spiritual successor to Halo 3. That seems like that was their ambition.
yeah, and like Halo 3 had cartoony graphics in a lot of respects, and this
Damn
actually,
fucking right it did.
yeah,
Yeah, it did.
fits it in that respect. Um, so, I mean, it's one of those things. People wanted the classic art style, and they more or less got it, and now, whatever. Uh,
I'm not complaining about the style. I'm not one of those people. Like I like the style. I'm not even sure if they've hit it themselves. That's the problem I feel.
yeah, the I will say the like stuff like texture pop into things. Like the only visual thing that really bugged me
The clouds.
was the phantoms because there were like I think twice you see them moving and then they like would hit like a point where they pivot and they just seem like badly animated things instead of something that has momentum. They're just like, oh,
Did
I
it
hit
really
this
look
part in the
awkward?
wire.
Didn't it? I couldn't actually put my finger on it.
I think it's partially that they're so blocky, and then they were not moving in a very graceful, aerodynamic way.
It felt very mechanical,
Yeah.
yeah. Very set piecey.
Well, all right. Any other thoughts, observations in the trailer, etc.?
I just want to take it all in, honestly. I was overall very pleased with the scope and the ambition and the inspiration and the genuineness I felt from watching the trailer. As much as we've criticized it, I'm very happy. I'm optimistic actually for more than I've ever been.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not criticizing it. I'm optimistic too. Like I said, I'm whelmed. I'm not. It's one of those things you have to keep your expectations in check and not let anything get too much of you. I think like everything there to see, like it's gonna be fun. Like I hope the story's there, but the gameplay looks fun, and that's never really been an issue for me. Even in the worst Halo game, I've had fun playing it.
Well, I cannot honestly say the same because I had issues with Halo 5, even though I thought it was a very, very awesomely well played game. It just didn't feel like the direction I wanted Halo's gameplay to go in. And I'm not as worried at all when I was watching this because like even things like the equipment and stuff just felt, oh yeah, that is awesome. That feels proper.
We didn't see any evidence of like thruster stabilization or anything. There seems to be like some sort of like side dash thing, but there was nothing with so some of the moveset from Halo 5 might be getting pared back.
Well, I'm happy with Spider Chief. I'm very happy with Spider Chief. Although one comment was revealed when someone asked, "What happens if you grapple hook a grunt in midair?" and you automatically think, "Well, it will draw the figure towards you." No, apparently the chief defies physics and flies up towards the grunt in the aerial position where it's at.
Yeah, I feel like I
What?
understand why you would do that, but yeah, the grapple shot is not going to make any sense from a physics standpoint. That's
Yeah,
just saying that
that's
right now.
weird. Yeah, that's weird.
Like he's a walking tank. He should be dragging basically everything except vehicles and geometry towards him. I will say, for all the like people who are complaining and wailing and gnashing of teeth, it's actually interesting that all the YouTube stuff I've seen, I mean, I don't watch that stuff most of the time, but just going through it seems much more positive than the Twitter and etc. forum stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was chatting with on Dustin on Particular was on Twitch watching. I hopped onto the chat there to watch Dustin's reaction, and he seemed very happy and pleased with it.
Yeah, so I think it's probably just who got excessively hyped, what people are looking for. I do think that for all the Halo is dead stuff, as we're recording late on the 23rd, Halo Infinite gameplay premiere 8-minute demo is the number 2 trending video on YouTube, behind a One Direction video and above a J. Cole music video.
Don't ask me how I know this, but the One Direction's anniversary just hit. That's why all the wee teenage girls' hearts are melting for them right now. And there's no way Halo and Pew Pew will ever beat teenage girls. So
yeah, but Halo's videos are number 2, number 5, and number 27. They're all above Destiny's Beyond Light gameplay trailer. So clearly, people are hungry for Halo. And I think that's only a good thing. And hopefully soon we'll have a lot more to talk about.
yeah, hopefully. I want to see multiplayer. I hope it's going to be as awesome as I am imagining it to be.
All right, well, we will see. And we'll talk to you then. That wraps up this show today. Thanks for joining us. Show notes and links for this episode, as well as articles and more, can be found on our website, forwardtodon.com. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or Stitcher. Check out our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/forwardtodawn, or follow us on Twitter for updates on all of our content by following the handle @forwarddawn. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.